Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Now I know this wasn't the usual series that I put out for the week, but I wanted to try out something different, and instead of condensing everything into a 10-minute video or less with 5 short stories, I will cover the same topic as an individual video so I can focus on going in more detail. I am hoping that this forces me to put a bit more effort into researching so I can speak about it and be more knowledgeable, as well as have more time to go over some of the more important features without feeling time constrained in any way. So starting with that, today we have the Space Force. They've been in the news in the past, but last week they released a recruitment video, and without further ado, here it is.
Some people look to the stars and ask, what if? Our job is to have an answer. We have to imagine what will be imagined. Plan for what's possible while it's still impossible. Maybe you weren't put here just to ask the questions. Maybe you were put here to be the answer. Maybe your purpose on this planet isn't on this planet.
Damn, not gonna lie, that last bit at the end with maybe your purpose on this planet is not really to be on this planet really got me. I mean, haven't we all thought about going to space at some point or another? Or maybe we just looked up at the night sky and wondered, what else is out there? But hype aside, space is heating up, and alongside this recruitment video, there was a little Q&A hosted by the Space Foundation as they were going over some of the future of the Space Force and taking questions from people. It was hosted by Barbara Barrett, Air Force Secretary, and John Raymond, Chief of Space Operations and Commander of the Space Command, also known as the guy that Steve Carell will be playing in the new Netflix special, Space Force. I don't know about you, but Raymond kinda looks more like a Bruce Willis to me than a Steve Carell, but I just hope the show's a hit. Overall, the Q&A was pretty vague and generic, and these were some of the larger questions that were asked. Firstly, why does the Space Force exist, and why now? This is probably one of the more obvious answers, and they did mention that if anything, it's more on the late end because space plays such a fundamental role in our everyday lives, and every one of us use space technology or items that come from space in our daily lives, be it GPS, broadcasting, weather forecasting, etc. And now you have commercial guys such as SpaceX and Blue Origin planning to make trips to space, so how can you not have a defense force centered around, or at least protecting that method of travel? Especially when you consider that America's not-so-friendly friends, Russia and Iran, are developing their own space program, and China is just letting debris from the space station fall out of the sky and land on Earth. Can we just take a minute to go over how crazy that last bit is? Just last week, there were uncontrolled debris from a Chinese rocket which passed over New York and LA as it fell back to the Earth. Now, it did land in the ocean, but I don't mean to be Chicken Little.
Run for your lives! Everyone run for cover! The sky is falling! The sky is falling!
But what if China had a slight miscalculation, and there was a chance that it could have landed in the US, and just a shitstorm would have occurred? If you don't think this is likely, here's the rockets from China just destroying whole villages when they come back to Earth. Now, most of these are planned and they do issue notices to the villagers, but it just goes to show, like, you're just letting it fall without any controlled environment. Like, if there are still people in there and they don't get the notice in time, they could be completely destroyed by a rocket. To me, that's just completely crazy to understand and try and wrap my head around. But aside from earthbound threats, there are some other things like solar flares, asteroids, and maybe aliens that could even show up at any moment. So shit like that happening definitely sounds like a good reason to have a first line of defense. Another question that was asked was, how are people going to be trained and recruited, and what's the ideal candidate for the Space Force? And they were pretty blunt about it. The division was going to be split between two groups, operation and strategy. And if you wanted operations, all you had to do was be 6 foot plus and jacked to the core. Essentially, you had to be the rock of the mountain. And if you wanted to be in strategy, you just had to be Elon Musk. Pretty simple and straightforward, right? Well, obviously, I'm joking, but they were pretty vague about this as well, but the requirements are on their website for each individual role. But what they did say was that they are looking for more people from a STEM background currently, likely in order for them to be able to understand all of the technical that goes behind some of the future missions they have planned. And while it is open to the public at large, they are pulling from other branches of the military if they do find good candidates. One important thing they mentioned, and it is completely believable, is that currently they do not have a recruitment problem. Pretty much they currently have more applicants than they know what to do with. Whether or not all these applicants are suitable candidates remains to be determined, but suffice to say, just like NASA, getting into this group will mean that you have to be the elite of the elite and not just an everyday Joe. When asked about partnerships and who the Space Force will be working with, it got pretty interesting. Locally, they'll be working with NASA, which is a given, but the general direction seems to be a slight branch off in the Space Force, where one group will directly deal with threats inbound to Earth and the US from space, and even other countries, and another will be doing joint work with NASA on exploratory missions. This just makes me think, imagine along with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the moon, you had these huge army guys with laser rifles or something. It would be a sight to behold, and it's pretty much StarCraft at that point. The Q&A didn't speak too much about deals with companies like Virgin Galactic, SpaceX, and Blue Origin, but I imagine that these would be more contract work, like paying them to get satellites in orbit and other things similar to that. If, and it's a very big if, one of the commercial groups were to reach Mars or another planet before NASA, then it may become a joint effort at that point, but typically it's governments that finance huge major endeavors such as traveling to an undiscovered location, and then commercial groups come afterwards because of the risk. But Elon Musk is a crazy guy, so who knows really how it's going to play out. Internationally, they did mention something along the lines of a League of Nations for space, which sounds like the coolest thing ever. It's pretty much a coalition with the US, the UK, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, France, and Germany, and they're building rules and policies for traveling and potentially inhabiting space in the future. It sounds cool, but when you think about it, we already have groups such as the UN and G8, which is meant to simulate similar functions on Earth, and both of these always get tied up in corruption scandals and drama, so it doesn't really inspire too much confidence. But I'm a man who is hopeful for the future of mankind, so I hope that this coalition can work together to set up a better future for space travel for us all. The danger here, though, is that there are some major players in the space industry that are not included here, namely China and Russia. So does that mean that these guys can do whatever they want? Because we have seen that people really don't want to mess with these countries because they still hold a lot of power by themselves. The more exciting news was that the Space Force just launched their first mission last week. Launching from Cape Canaveral on Sunday, the X-37B, which is actually in the recruitment video trailer, is stocked with a bunch of experiments and materials from the Space Force and NASA, and is both unmanned and reusable. One of the experiments include transforming solar power into microwave radio frequency energy that can be sent back to Earth, as well as other general tests of rocket reusability and durability ahead of future missions. Overall though, this mission is still classified, which means that while we know it's happening, we don't specifically know what is happening. For all we know, they could be testing out super weapons or the Men in Black out there.
You know what the difference is between you and me? I make this look good.
But unless we have a satellite system of our own, we'll never know. And I guess that's what it means to be part of the defense budget, so secrecy becomes the norm for national security. The X-37B is expected to return in October of this year, so just 5 months away. So maybe when it does return, we'll know a bit more about how some of the experiments went and what they actually were for. And that's it for this video, guys. Yes, the Space Force is hiring, but unless you're the elite of the elite or the cream of the crop, you likely won't be selected. But hey, all of us can still sit and enjoy the spectacle from the comfort of our homes, and I for one would love to be involved. But if I can't, I'll sit and enjoy it happening all the same. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.